International Culinary Studio is a world-renowned culinary education platform designed to support meaningful, purposeful, and future-skilled people across the globe to amplify their skills. In this podcast series, we connect with culinary leaders all over the globe to explore their organizations, their passions, what makes their culture unique, and how to create sustainable organizations for the future. I'm Cheryl Cordier, co-founder and host of International Culinary Studio.
We are super excited to be launching our International Culinary Studio podcast to share the global voices across the industry who are enabling human potential through education and empowerment and adding value to the industry. I wanted to spend some time with co-founder and CEO of International Culinary Studio, Cheryl Cordier. In this podcast, Cheryl will share stories of her journey and what has led her to where she is today, and also explore the future. Hello, Cheryl.
Hi, Catherine. Thanks for having me.
Good morning.
Thanks for chatting to me.
So tell us about your journey and career in the lead up to founding International Culinary Studio.
Oh my goodness, where do I begin? Probably many years ago, there was a beautiful hotel built in the tiny little farming area that I grew up in, a German farming area. And I went in the one day and asked for a part-time job while I was still at school. And as they say, the rest is history. I absolutely fell in love with the hospitality industry. Grew up loving teaching and always thought that I would become a teacher one day. And then have always been an avid little cook or chef. Loved cooking from a very young age, and still today really enjoy being in the kitchen. So I guess International Culinary Studio for me was a sort of a culmination of all of the loves of my life thrown in together, as sort of all my passions in one. And very proud of International Culinary Studio today.
Cheryl, can you share more about what International Culinary Studio stands for today? What's important and what is International Culinary Studio?
So a number of years ago, in fact 21 years ago, I started a chef college face-to-face back in Cape Town in South Africa, and it grew to being the largest culinary face-to-face college in Africa. We ended up with 6 campuses and spread across South Africa. Whilst I had that business and was passionately teaching people to become chefs and getting them into either jobs themselves or starting their own businesses in line with sort of chefing or culinary, I realized that there was a lot of people working remotely that couldn't get to us. And for me, I have this firm belief that everyone working in a culinary or in a chef position should be qualified or have some level of skill. After all, they are preparing the food that we and so I wanted to try and find a way to get to those people that couldn't get to us. After doing quite a bit of research, and this dates back to sort of 2007, 2008, 2009, there was no one doing online culinary education. And so for me, that became a bit of a challenge. And so I started researching then how we could create an online learning platform that could get to the people that couldn't, from a physical point of view, actually come in to study in our classrooms. So that was really the sort of beginning of the journey for me.
And so you have received many awards, founded and sold businesses, and spent time at Harvard and Stanford. Can you share a short story from each of these significant milestones in your life?
Sure. I started entering business award competitions purely from a PR point of view, just to try and get exposure for the business. And those sort of translated into me winning a number of awards, all of which sort of became better than the previous one. So I really felt very privileged. One of the awards that I didn't win, interestingly enough, was the Entrepreneur of the Year for Ernst & Young, and I was a runner-up. And they said that the reason I didn't win was because I hadn't launched a global business. So that was like, for me, the next challenge. Like, if you ever tell me you won't be able to do something, well, then I'm going to prove you wrong. So I can now proudly say that I have launched a global business because we have students from all over the world studying and enrolled with us. So I never went to a university. I did an apprenticeship model myself when I studied, and I went to a hotel school in South Africa, qualified as a hotel general manager. And a few years later, I was sitting in a business directors meeting with my business coach at the time, and he said to me, "Why don't you go and do an honors degree?" And I jokingly said, "Well, don't you need a master's?" And he looked at me and said, "Don't you have a master's?" So I said, "No." He said, "Well, then you should consider doing your master's." And I said, "Well, do I not need a degree?" And he looked at me and he said, "Do you not have a degree?" So I said, "No, I've got a diploma." And he said, "Well, you're the most successful person that I've ever met that doesn't have a degree and has never been to university." And so after winning the Endeavour, being chosen as an Endeavour entrepreneur, I was given the opportunity to attend Harvard Business School. And so packed my bags and went off to Boston and attended Harvard Business School. And when I was there, I told my story, which became like the joke of the whole cohort, because they had never met anyone that had never been to university. And they said going to Harvard for my first university experience was quite surreal and quite unreal at the same time. And then in 2016, I was given the opportunity. Sorry, that was in 2016. And then 2 years ago, I was given the opportunity to go to Stanford. And I was like, if not, why not? Never been to university, but attended Harvard and Stanford Business School. Absolutely highlights of my life, having exposure to that level of expertise in the entrepreneurial world. It was just mind-blowing. It's sort of an experience I will never forget. And that is thanks to entering those competitions right in the beginning.
Amazing. And so you've obviously had an incredibly rewarding career, but as we all know, as entrepreneurs, it comes with its own challenges. What are some of the things that you wished you had done differently over your time?
Gosh, there's a lot. I think the one of the things that I keep reminding myself, and I think sometimes I'm a little bit stupid or naive, is that I really have the sort of tenacity and self-belief to keep going even when things get tough. I think there's a number of things. Like, one is potentially not investing in the best up front. Often you don't have the cash and you just can't do it, and so you end up sort of paying more because you now sort of didn't get the best of the best. And I'm talking about things like your website or your premises, your business building and things like that. So with hindsight, I wished I hadn't skimped on those things. The reality is that is, just the nature, I guess, of the beast. You're always trying to save money. So always trying to have a lean startup. All of my businesses have always started sort of in the garage or in the kitchen of my home. And then I guess the other mistake I've made is I'm far too empathetic, and I hire quite fast, but I fire very slow. So I've ended up sometimes carrying people that are really actually don't have my business's best interests in their heart, and I've been too soft to end the relationship. And so I guess those are probably two of the things that I've done and I don't think I'll change going into the future, even though it's probably a lesson I should have learned. It's just the nature of who I am. So yeah, that would be my suggestion to business people, though, to consider those areas.
And so, what are some of the key things since launching the business that you are most proud of?
I guess there's a number of different things. The one is the accreditation that we've obtained for our programs, which are, I believe, global leaders in our field. I think that our programs are excellent, and the accreditations that we've obtained globally prove that. The fact that we have got successful students and graduates literally that have started their own businesses or are working in some top establishments around the world is testament to that as well. I think just the whole business has been a very difficult business. I mean, we launched prior to COVID, so we were not a sort of a COVID knee-jerk business. And the other thing, which is I find quite frustrating and I'm determined to overcome, is that a lot of people think launching an online course is putting a PDF online and calling it a course. We have invested heavily in creating really, really fun interactive programs so that our students have an excellent learning experience, and it's not sort of flipping through a textbook or PDF or watching a video and answering a few questions. So our students have a way better experience than I believe they do with other people.
And so, as you mentioned, the organisation is a world-leading interactive, digitally enabled culinary certification platform. What are some of the more detailed features that you can share and some of the benefits that are unique to International Culinary Studio?
Well, when I started International Culinary Studio, after having come from a background where I had worked for a number of years for a distance learning educator previously, I knew what the pitfalls were. And so when I set up the business, one of the first things I did was create what we call our 360-degree high contact model. And we looked at all the different areas that touch a student during their studies. So one of the big things will be, for example, pastoral care, where we cover all the well-being, the peer-to-peer interaction. We run, for example, coffee and cake sessions with our students. So just trying to engage the students or keep them engaged and sort of help and support them along their, what can often be a lonely journey when you're studying remotely. So we looked at that area, and then we looked at each individual area. So our examinations, how they will be run remotely and how we can support the learner. The actual content, how can we enable the students to be able to move through them seamlessly without us sort of having to unlock things, that they can literally move through their program as they go at their own pace, enabling them to set their own study goals and their own study parameters. And then the interaction also with a qualified chef instructor and or assessor. So they are the center of their own learning experience, and we have scaffolded around to enable the students to be able to move through the program.
How does International Culinary Studio support the success of students' future? So it's one thing to be able to go through and utilize the platform and have all of that wonderful 360 wrapped around the students. But then what? How do you support that success ongoingly?
So it is quite interesting. Part of the full programs require the students to work in the industry, and actually they have a logbook that gets signed off. And we have a very good relationship with the industry, so we end up chatting and meeting with their industry placement essentially their industry placement partner as well. We often find 9 out of 10 times that the student, where they do their industry placement, actually gets offered a job and they stay on there. And so we place quite a high emphasis on making sure when they apply for their sort of in-service training program, part of their program, that they look to find a place that they would actually like to work in. So it's kind of a win-win for the industry. The industry gets a really dedicated person, someone who's researched them and wants to work there. And the student gets the opportunity to work in kind of their dream establishment as part of their training. As I say, I would say 9 out of 10 students stay on in that establishment. Sometimes to the detriment of the course, because they sometimes get pulled into the business and then drop off out of the program. And that's when our sort of wraparound becomes really important, where we try and get the student to at least complete their program so that they are giving their ultimate qualification or certification. But we stay in touch with our students. We do destinational tracking to see where they are after they're finished. We have a private closed Facebook and alumni group so that our students can stay in contact with each other. We still speak to many of our students that have sort of left, 5, 6, 7 years ago. We're still in contact with them.
And so what are some of your secrets to retaining good people? You've mentioned that you still keep in contact with a lot of people that have been your students over the years. And how do you think that organizations can retain good people? Obviously, education is a critical part to that, supporting people in a holistic way, their emotional capabilities and their development, their well-being, a lot more of a holistic view of people. But I'd love to hear more about some of the things that International Culinary Studio does to retain not only their people, but also the students that you work with.
So we have quite an interesting business model because we straddle the different time zones. We have a team based in New Zealand and a team based in South Africa, and that enables us to essentially be available 24 hours a day for our students. And that obviously comes with its own complexity. And so I very quickly set up sort of plans in place for communication. We have regular meetings with our team. So independently, whoever the team reports into, are weekly meetings with their managers or their team leaders. And then we have an all staff meeting once a month, which, believe you me, is pretty hectic. We have some people attending at 6 o'clock in the morning and others attending at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So it's a commitment, but it's one of the things we mention up front when we bring on a new person. Being in education is absolutely sort of the center of our business. So our team are encouraged all the time to attend any training and development that they would like to. whether it's business related or even not within their field, just to keep the learning and growing alive. The chef instructors are all required to complete industry hours every year just to keep them current and so that they are the best that they can be for the students as well. And then we are members of a number of different associations also globally. So we attend conferences, attend meetings, and are very involved in sort of stakeholder engagement, meeting with the industry all the time, trying to just stay abreast. And every team member is encouraged to do the same.
And so what do you recognise as some of the key industry challenges in the global landscape at the moment?
Oh, there's a number. One of the things is just the constant putting down of people working in hospo. Everyone keeps on saying hospo people or hospitality trained people are low level. And the reality is they're not. They actually require a high set of skills. They require to be customer service orientated. They're required to have empathy. They're required to work under pressure, work in a hot kitchen. There's so many things that they actually have to overcome. And I think we are our own worst enemy. And I'd like to actually not put myself in that bracket. But hospitality owners have to stop putting employees that work in hospitality down. The other thing is I keep being told from industry, we work long hours and it's really tough in hospitality and it's unsocial. But the reality is so do nurses, so do doctors, so do ambulance drivers, so do police officers. There's a number of fields that work, long hours, wrong hours, weekends and public holidays. It's not just the hospitality industry. So again, we keep constantly putting the hospitality industry down as opposed to building it up. The reality is it's the most rewarding career that anyone can have. We deal with people, we make people's lives better. We make people's special events fun and enjoyable. We provide pleasure through our delivering of food or our hospitality to people. So I think we're our own worst enemy. And part of that links into this whole training and education. Industry as a whole doesn't spend or invest in education. It's always the first thing to go. You're a hospitality owner and you need a new air conditioning. You're going to buy that ahead of training your employees. But having an employee that's trained and feels comfortable, confident, understands food wastage, understands sustainability, there's so many benefits to having an employee that's actually trained. I think training would be the first thing to invest in and not the last, which is often the case. I guess that's why I'm so excited about the benefits of International Culinary Studio. Is it's traditionally culinary education has been really, really exclusive and very expensive. And having it on an online portal means that we can deliver it in a much, much more cost-effective way. And I believe that now we make culinary education accessible to more people, just from a cost point of view in itself. So there is no reason to not be training your team and educating your team and building them up and telling them, they're in such a great profession. It's one of those caring professions, and the people that work in it come from a sort of caring background nature. And I really believe that we should be building them up and telling them what a great profession it is, as opposed to the flip side of that.
So what are some of the shifts that you think are needed to move the industry forward? If this is, some of the experiences and the challenges that are happening in the industry now, what are some of those things of how do we get to that future state where we want the industry to move to?
I think recognizing that education is sort of the future. There's different ways now that one can be educated. There's micro credentials, which are stackable. So you could potentially put your employees onto more of a bite-sized training and education program. I think that industry's feedback to us is often that the leadership is where they need to invest more. And I guess so looking for leadership programs for your team. If we're building up the leaders, in turn they will build up their team at the same time.
And so finally, Cheryl, what is your futuristic vision for the industry?
Oh, I don't think I'm going to be alive long enough to see it, but I really believe that people working in a kitchen serving food need to be trained in health and safety at least as a minimum. And I would really like to see people working in a kitchen to have had some form of education. I know that feels like a bit of a pipe dream, but I believe that International Culinary Studio is positioned to enable people to get a qualification at a much more affordable price, and hopefully, you know, that they will in turn encourage other people to study and be really proud of this profession. It's a really, really wonderful profession. And I mean, I come from the background and I'm very, very proud of being in the hospitality industry myself.
Well, thank you so much, Cheryl, for sharing your wonderful stories and your wonderful journey and showing incredible leadership in the industry.
Thanks very much, Catherine, and thanks for your time today as well. It was a pleasure chatting to you.
Thanks for listening to the International Culinary Studios podcast, where we bring you meaningful conversations with global leaders in culinary expertise from across the globe. To learn more about International Culinary Studio, head over to our website www.internationalculinarystudio.com.